5:38. 5:38, please. So, I will be chairing our meeting tonight because I'm by default the last person in executive standing. With Kum not standing, literally, that was the time. Because she broke her ankle. Did you like that? So she has a broken ankle and the doctor told her to keep off of it and keep it elevated for the next 48 hours. And so she's taking doctor's orders seriously, even though I told her, oh, just...
Israel.
That's right, we will carry you.
I suggested to Karen today, she could call him.
I said, why don't you use crutches? So, I'll do this for her. So hello and welcome. So I'm Sharon Nolt and I'm a parent from the Altamoma School District.
Sorry, Emily Steph from the Etiwanda School District, parent. Chrissy Spalding-Burchett, board trustee, essential and parent.
Mo Mendoza, parent and also a board of trustee.
Gloria Dandor, parent, Yasmin Unified School District.
Donna Mortar, assistant principal in the Etiwanda School District.
Edith Naranjo, parent from Chaffey District.
Israel Rangel from Cucamonga School District, I'm a parent.
Aaron Johnson from the West End of SELPA.
Susan Bogdanovich, administrator, West End Supper.
And we have some guests in the back. Thank you for coming. Can I have everybody please look at the agenda and after you have a moment to peek over it, hopefully you did, can I have a motion to accept this agenda?
Second.
Dory, you beat him. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. You have a copy of your minutes. Take a second to peek at those and then I'll ask for a motion.
Accept the minutes.
Have a second? Gloria. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Our members are in attendance. Around the table, we've had introductions. We are minus Kum because of a broken ankle, and we are also minus Liz because of a death in her family. The rest are here. Going on to number 5, Susan, this is you, but there's nothing to review. Okay, so on to district reports. I have something to report. We got some statistics back from the Altamoma School District that with our 4th year of our Champs Plus program, that's a preschool program. You all familiar with it? It's typically developing children along with children with IEPs working together in a preschool environment. Our statistics show that 95% of the children that go through this program can go into a full inclusion kindergarten. So we've had huge successes with our program. That's a good one. Yeah, because those are some big numbers. So we're really proud of that. It's really working well. Would anybody like to give a report from their district? Any good news?
Well, I want to share with you
Yes.
that I spoke with Mr. Bagger from Talks, and he is definitely willing to let us piggyback on any of their bulletins
For your
CDC,
MOGA?
or to do, which I also spoke to, totally my brain is just shut off right now, Ms. Templeton, about doing all calls through Cucamonga District for events that we're going to have.
And that's a yes. Did they tell you how to get that to them?
Just give it to them.
Okay.
That was the general.
Do you guys know what he's talking about, this committee? Well, we're going to get to it, so let's just wait. We'll get to it. Thank you. I have something to say about that. Anybody else?
I'd like to congratulate my the superintendent from Chaffey District for being named the superintendent of the year.
Nice.
I think that's big news.
That's
We have so much going on, but
So is that the local accident or state?
you know what? I'm not sure. I
Osceola School District, our special ed coordinator, Dee Dee Moga, is retiring officially. Very,
Some people want to retire.
I am very sorry that she's leaving, and I know a lot of people in our district will miss her. So,
When did she make that formal announcement? Just
The position
recently?
is posted.
Oh, it's posted?
yeah.
And you're losing your superintendent as well, right?
Possibility. And our great resource specialist. We're having some changes in our school district.
Well, how about the conference tomorrow for OMSD?
Oh, the parent conference, it's really ELAC. It doesn't have to really be specialized.
Because what do they give us special ed?
What are they training on?
It'll mostly be, I believe, Common Core and the local funding and the second language local funding.
It's a great conference. I miss it.
Okay, and that moves us on to letter B. This is the budget. Season.
I'll talk about that as well as my overall report, okay? And so in your packet, there you do have it. If you go to B1. So I can talk about that first, and then I'll go into the few items I wanted to talk to you about in my report. During our local plan review process, it had been brought forward that perhaps the CAC should have a designated budget that you have to live within, and that would be, clearly defined. I did a little work. I asked him to actually, our fiscal analyst, to go and put together what he could in broad terms of how we've been fiscally supporting the CAC, and I was amazed. I don't think there's another CAC in the state of California that would have a budget this size. So I think that speaks very well to how our staff is so supportive of the CAC. So if you look at this, each year we guesstimate, welcome. We are spending nearly $7,500 just to print the flyers for the CAC presentations. And as we move forward, I think we need to look at something that's more cost effective, because that's a lot of money being spent, and somehow we're not getting the kind of turnout I think that we would hope. So not the return on our money that we would like to see. So I think we really need to look at, in this computer age, what we could do that might work a little better for us. Facilities usage every time for any of your subcommittees or for the CAC meetings that we rent the room here, it's $10 an hour. So we are paying minimum $675 we calculated per year for facilities usage, even for our training. So every time that we use a room here. Overtime for the facility technicians, every time that we go beyond our 7:30 deadline, then the cost goes up, and so we calculate we spend about $250 per year for that purpose. In order to have the flyers or the training package or anything organized so they can go out to the districts, we have workability students that do that work for us. And so that is calculated at minimum wage, and we estimate that to be about $2,200 per year. The interpreters for the meetings, $1,260. Estimate for meeting packet printing, another $1,800. Office supplies, $1,000. Legislation day, so that's Ledge Information Sharing Day, flight registration and parking, about $1,000. So the total cost is $15,000 and a little change. And then on top of that, the county charges us an indirect rate. I think this is next year's rate, 9.86. So moving forward, that would be an additional almost $1,500 that gets tacked on. So you can see that I'm sure we've overlooked things, but at the least we are spending $16,500 per year to support the efforts of the CAC. Well,
I'd like to say most CACs, when they have a budget, it does not consist of this. Their budget consists of being able to utilize funds in other purposes, not for your basic necessities, to actually have a CAC and run the meeting. And then I wanted to reiterate the art and writing, OMSD paid for those flyers, but it's
But
on here.
If that were to go at the end of the year, and so last year, I believe we did pay for that, and the previous year, so this year is an exception, and we're very grateful to OMSD, but we wanted to show true costs of what they would be if we were bearing the costs ourselves, so thank you.
And then the student workability costs, they get paid through a grant.
They do, so
Okay,
these,
so we're really not paying them anything when they do work, they're paid for by that grant.
but our students are performing that work for the CAC. We could be sending them out and having them paid in some other things within the
But
community.
it's kind of, what I'm trying to say is it's kind of misleading. You're making it sound like that the WESELPA is paying $2,200 for these students to do this work. It doesn't come out of the WESELPA fund, it comes out of the special grant. And that's what the grant is for, to
And
pay these
we
students.
didn't break it down, what budget code we were using for any of this, we didn't. It was just to give you the big picture of what it costs to be able to provide everything that's being provided. I'd be curious, you said that you anticipated other things to be in the budget, what would those include?
Doing a parent conference, some CACs do that, things like that. And then with the interpreter, you could save a lot of money, like I've always said at the West End WESELPA Superintendent Council meetings, it's in the best interest of all 10 school districts if WESELPA would hire somebody that is also an interpreter. Because then you don't have to pay them, they can
And,
flex their hours.
We in fact did that at the last superintendent council meeting.
Okay,
Mhm.
because that saves money there. And then what's this indirect cost?
For any expense, so any expense that we have, the county charges us 9.86% for the processing. So the indirect cost covers things that are, there's no budget for county offices to have facilities, to have the various employees that they have. So that is how they are able to operate and function, is by the indirect cost that they charge for people who use their services. And that's common throughout the state, and there's a limit, and they're not at the top limit, but that is what it is, and so we wanted to be sure to show you the fully disclosed with the budget, what it is. So, I think it goes without saying that we are more than willing and gladly support the CAC. You can see fiscally as well as otherwise with all the trainings and everything that we do. So if the group is in agreement, I think that we should continue to move forward with us finding a way to support the efforts of the CAC rather than, what if the superintendent said, I think we should carve out $10,000 in the budget, then you'd be in a position where you'd have to say what you want to give up. And I just picked that number out of the sky. I'm not saying that that's what the case would be, but I think you're in a much better position, and that's what I've said from the start, with us fiscally supporting whatever is needed for the CAC, and within my department, if we have to cut something else in order to make that happen, that's what we've done. So,
You really can't carve anything else out of this CAC because everything that we're doing here is mandatory through the law. So therefore, they couldn't really cut anything out. It's mandated.
we're mandated to have a CAC, but I
And
think
mandated to have so many meetings, so many presentations. It's written.
The only thing
There's
not
actually
mandated is
a-
the art and writing.
And there's actually a CAC manual. I can print it.
So I have a copy in my office, but there are CACs that might come quarterly, and that's the extent of it throughout the state. So I came here because I knew you had a fabulous CAC, and I want to do whatever I can to support it, because I believe that by educating parents, that's how we help them to understand the disabilities that their children have and how to procure services and that sort of thing.
Well, just with the art and writing contest, like you said, I'm really also thankful to OMSC and, thanks to Mo for sharing it again. I mean, I'm just so thankful and I respect you so much for that and many things. I mean, that alone is, just the printing and we're not sharing that, and we're not having the support or anything that. It's like a lot.
It's a lot.
So I just wanted
Portion
you
of
to
our
see
budget, so-
what that would be.
Right.
And like I said, no, I didn't want to give the appearance that this is all coming out of what was formerly the Regionalized Services Program Services money. It was just, we were listing out expenses that go into making that.
But when the parents are asking for a budget, or some of the CAC members, they actually mean a budget outside of the mandated stuff that, has to be done for the CAC to actually be
It
functional.
was not presented to me that way, so I was asked to have a budget with no other definition. So this is what we came up with.
I think this is really good because for my information, I appreciate having this. I
Yeah.
really want it, this
Right.
is good to know and to have all
So,
this information.
I think though what you're going for is if we want to do something else, like a parent conference or whatever, so let's try to organize it, then let's ask if, they haven't said no to us. Everything we've asked for, we've basically gotten. So let's plan what we want and then ask them to, if we can do it. And then if we start getting a lot of no's, then let's say, okay, can we have a budget to get some of our stuff done?
Sounds good. So I did have a bit of an administrative report. I sent out an update to all of you about what happened at State SELPA last week. And a lot of things going on, but mainly, I know that Christy has put on her Facebook about the meetings at CSDI next week. I don't know if any of you have the opportunity to attend. There's a website on the San Mateo County Office of Ed where you can go in and see the actual 7 questions that are going to be addressed. So what happened is this, that the state of California knows that we need to overhaul special ed in many regards. And so Linda Hammond-Darling, who is a professor at Stanford, through the Schwab Foundation, was asked to put together this whole task force. And it's kind of morphed as it's moved along, and various agencies are now participating. And so there are, I believe, 27 members to this task force. It's being run through San Mateo County Office of Ed. It's a CTC, Linda Hammond-Darling. It's 27 members, and former superintendent of El Dorado County, and a former SELPA director as the executive directors. The meetings are facilitated by 2 other gentlemen who I forget their title, but they're not the executive directors, but something else. So they, as part of their effort to get input, are meeting in various locations. So they've met at Southwest SELPA in Los Angeles. They have met in Marin County and San Mateo County. They'll be at Riverside School for the Deaf over on Forest Street in Riverside next Monday, all day long. People can go and listen in to the task force meeting. However, it's my understanding that they have subcommittees that will be breaking up during the day to address their various topics. So they're coming from all over the state. It's their work meeting. But at 4 o'clock to 5:30, they're going to be holding a public forum. And the process for that, I'm not entirely sure, but I do know that they take input on those questions. So I would imagine that they'll be facilitating the meeting and asking for input on question number 1, and then perhaps you can stand at the mic and give your input. There's also a survey monkey that you can see on that website, San Mateo Task Force, to go ahead and type in your answers to the questions also. Last week at State SELPA, we took a considerable amount of time Thursday morning and broke into groups for the 7 questions and just developed brainstormed ideas of what we think needs to be addressed. So what are they looking at? They're looking at funding for special education. They're looking at teacher credentialing. They're looking at more opportunities for inclusive education. And they are looking at systems like positive behavior interventions and supports, response to intervention, all those sorts of things. And just really want the input of the public. The governor has gone on record saying that he will, when all is said and done, carry the bill to the legislators to actually put into place the changes that are recommended. They are reading every expert article on all of these topics that they can get a hold of. They're looking at best practice programs throughout the United States and in California. And it's really a serious matter. So there's Monday 4 to 5:30, and then Tuesday morning again 10 to 11:30. So I would suggest if you're interested in the process, or if you would like to have the opportunity to participate by speaking to the group, that'll be your opportunity. And then they'll be meeting in San Diego, and I think they're done with that round of public meetings at that point. So it's a great opportunity to be able to participate in the process and to send them your thoughts too if you can't be there and have something you particularly want to bring to their attention. Ledge Information Day, Kum and I are making plans to go to Ledge Information Sharing Day. So we'll have the art and writing contest on April 30th, I believe, or
No, 29.
the 29th, and then early the next morning, Kum and I will get on a plane at 6 in the morning and go to Sacramento for the day. You remember last year Martina and Russell and I went. It'll be a fabulous opportunity. They're going to recognize a legislator who has really done a lot for special education in terms of legislation they've authored and the support they've provided. And then we will have appointments to go meet with local legislators to talk about the key items that state SELPA will identify. This last week we began to look at the bills pertaining to special ed that were submitted. February 21st was the date. 2,000 new bills were submitted to the legislators, and there are a few, but not really too many, about special education. But I'll bring you more about that later. A week and a half ago, we had a fabulous day. The Workability and TPP grant teams held a career fair in the Chino district, and we had 400 students that went through the career fair. They had also invited a lot of agencies that support students, and I followed up that afternoon with a meeting where I invited a whole lot of agencies to come meet with myself and a couple of program specialists, and we talked about what can we do to improve the outcomes for our students as they transition into adult life. And it was just a fabulous opportunity to consider critical issues to each and every agency as well as education. And so I look forward to having more dialogue with each of those agencies. So they are all invested in the career technical education for Common Core. There's the new law for employment first, where regional center has to actually, at age 16, start giving students the option that they can consider employment as their first option when they're adults, rather than only having the option of a sheltered workshop. And then the third one, there is a $400,000 planning grant that Katy Community College has received for what the governor is calling Community College Consortia. So the community college has to work with the high school districts in our area to develop a plan for how they're going to improve post-secondary opportunities for individuals, including those with second language issues and students with disabilities. So I think it's a fabulous opportunity for us to get involved in saying, you know what, as our students move up, here's what they're going to need to be able to really have an opportunity to succeed in colleges. And so that's all really exciting. Just wanted to talk about one other thing, because I think I would be remiss if we didn't talk about it this evening, and that is that our bylaws, I'm going to read you this and then I'll go into the specifics. No member will use any WESELPA logo, flyers, distribution lists, or materials for personal advertisement or promotion of special interest events, activities without the permission of the WESELPA administrator. I don't want to talk about a specific situation, although I know many of you wrote to me last week about concerns about something that you received that was a personal email. So I don't think we need to have a discussion about this, but if you want to, I think we all need to agree that the distribution list is for business going amongst us for the purposes of CHC. if you want to communicate with our CAC members, it isn't appropriate to use that distribution list for something that's a personal email. So I just wanted to reinforce that, and that we all need to be careful, and we need to respect that maybe people want to be here to be part of the CAC, but sometimes maybe it's not appropriate, and it isn't appropriate to use that for other purposes. So, enough said about that. Okay, let's move on.
I have questions about your administration. The workability and the TPA that went to Chino, is that for only the Chino kids?
Each year, it's my understanding that they have set that up with Chino District because Chino wanted that to happen. And so they have done it in Chino. I would love the opportunity to expand that and continue to look for opportunities to have a similar opportunity in our other high school districts.
Okay, and then the post-secondary plan for Chaffey College, that they're going to be getting the $430 million?
No,
No.
400,000.
God.
That's like 1% of it, Bo.
Still, that's still a lot of money. Is this grant only for the second language learners and special ed?
No, it's a community college consortia. So a consortia is a group of people working together. And so they have to bring all these groups together in order to continue to get funding for community colleges, I think probably is what it's
But part of-
going to.
But part of that
They've
plan
gotten
specifies.
It's only to plan. So they had till February 28th to submit their plan to the state, which they've already done. I have not read that plan,
Okay.
but I'm sure they covered whatever the essential components were that they had to.
Part of it was special ed because they don't, our kids are not included. And they come and do job fairs.
So I'm
And they
pleased
have
to report
nobody
that
for
when I
our
had this
kids.
big group get together, that I had the representative from the Disabled Students Programs and Services from Chaffey Community College District and from Cal State San Bernardino. So I'm going to do whatever I can to foster the conversations that need to happen. So, yeah.
Okay.
So I have a question. Tomorrow on your pack agenda, and I'm assuming at the end of the month, you're going to go over the XPOT work group update. Are you able to update us here today on that? So we're aware?
Is there interest in hearing about that? We have a phenomenon known as the XPOT that all the districts this year put in $29.66 per student in the district. So it's not just the special ed students, but it is all students in the district. So if you have 100 students, you'd be putting in that times $29.66. If you have 10 special ed students, no, it's all the students. So just to clarify that. So then, there are different umbrellas, as it were, under the XPOT. So we have the MPS placements and non-public schools and non-public agencies. If I use an acronym, please, and you don't understand, just ask me. So when a district sends a student to a non-public school, or they receive services through a non-public agency, the XPOT covers 30%. It's a risk pool. So, because you never know how many students you're going to have that will have extraordinary costs. So, there's 30% that's covered through the XPOT for MPS, MPA placements, and then we up front pay the bills for 100% and a couple times during the year, then Tim invoices the districts for the 70%. So that's that piece. Then we have the legal costs, which again are split, and then we have some settlement agreements, IEEs, if they're through a settlement agreement, they're covered under the XPOT. And then the other issue is the return. So what they're really, really dealing with, I think when it comes down to it, what the agreement would probably be is, I'll tell you that in a minute. They need to decide, are they going to continue to fund non-public school placements the way they have, or they had a FICMAT study, which is a group that came in and analyzed our funding a couple years ago, and they said, we think every district, if they're sending a kid to a non-public school, should just bear that cost. Well, sometimes there are kids with very intense needs that we can't, like take Mount Baldy, little tiny district, and if they had a student who needed a tremendous amount of supports that even the county program couldn't provide for, they might have to opt to send the kid to a a non-public school? Well, by virtue of all the supports and the transportation to and from the non-public school, the costs are high. And so it's like an insurance pool. If you happen to have a student, or if you happen to have, for whatever reason, a due process case, because those can become very costly too, that there's a need to have a risk pool to cover these kinds of costs. So the MPS MPA, they'll either pay 70%, 30% the way they have been, or the districts would opt to change that somehow, including maybe 100%. Then, can you help me if I forget anything? Then the legal costs, one of the fiscal members from a district analyzed over the last 5 years the legal costs and actually sorted them so that you could see how much per student each of the districts was bearing in cost for legal costs every year. And there were a few that kind of stood out significantly, but then the rest, it was only like $2 to $5, 20 cents per 88, depending in the different years. So his proposal was perhaps we should look at funding at $5 per student or something for just this legal cost, and when you reached a cap of whatever it was, say $20 per student, then this risk pool would kick in. So I mean, it's very complicated, but I'm giving you the shortened version of it all. So they have to wrestle with that and decide. The third piece is our return. So at the end of the year, if you overspent what you contributed, hypothetically, and even if you underspent, and let's say, Donna, you just, it's even. What you contributed is the same as what you spent. Currently, what we've been doing for many years is we take the balance that's left over and we divide it by the number of students, and then you get your proportionate share. So if you have 10 students, you're going to get, let's say there's 100 students. I mean, 100 students. And you have 10% of the students, you're going to get 10% of the return. But if you have 20% of the students, you're going to get 20% of the return, regardless of what your costs were.
You're going to be able to spend?
Yeah, because it's unpredictable. Those kinds of costs are unpredictable and you can't project. So what they're looking at is what I believe they will probably determine is more equitable is if you've overspent, then automatically you don't get any return. But however, if everybody underspends and there's so much money left that if I gave you a proportionate share, you'd get more than you ever kicked in the beginning, then they would have to modify it so that it would be fair, and they have a mechanism for doing that too.
Earned income credit.
So does that?
Yeah, two questions about that. Is this based on the FIC map? Is this based on the FIC map that was done in 2010?
Pardon me?
Is this based on the FIC map report from 2010?
In part, and then analysis of data more currently.
And then, so what the recommendations in 2010 looked a lot different than this, right?
As I recall, the most significant one was that they should have the districts placing students bear the cost of the MPS.
Right. And that WESELPA would cover like almost 100% legal costs. That was what FICMAT recommended then, but that's a lot different than this.
Yes and no. And like I said, it's all discussion right now, and so
Right.
they had information last time, they'll have discussion coming up on the 28th, and then they will take action at the April meeting.
Right. The reason I want to bring it up now is in case anybody wanted to look into this further, because they're going to vote in April. We're not having a meeting until May as a CAC, so if we wanted to advise the time.
So what would be your bottom line concern, Christy?
I'm just trying to get a
Okay.
better understanding of how it's
I'll chime into
working.
that, because everybody hears this, and so does all the 10 superintendents, is basically what you gave about the non-public school, you know, an extraordinary student, like in Mount Baldy, but about 99.9% of the time, what it is the school district puts the kid in a non-public school because they don't want to deal with the parent or the child, and they know that there's a pool, and they know that they can make out better, so that's what they do. And and that's part of the reason why I go to the superintendent meetings, because I would like that to stop. Not only that, the legal fees are extraordinary when they don't have to be. And I even gave it to the superintendents before from other areas where they actually use different ways of doing the legal and the non-public school. Most of them will not pay for the non-public school. But if you do have an extraordinary case, like Mount Baldy, yes, there should be a risk pool, something like that, for those cases. But for us to continue to bail out Chino, I'm sorry, it's inappropriate.
Well, the data may or may not support exactly what you're saying, but 70% of the cost is still being borne by the district. We have 5 very large districts and 5 very small
But
districts.
tell them how much a non-public school costs.
It ranges from under 20,000 to over 150,000. But you have to understand that we do have students that are placed in residential treatment centers at the state,
And they should
because these are
follow.
students with mental health issues that
Yes.
really cannot be served in anything that we have to offer, because it's our last choice to send them away. And there is no reimbursement for those costs. Used to be, we have that out-of-home count funding now, and it used to be that if you placed a student in a non-public school, that the state reimbursed you 70%, and you still received ADA for those students. So then maybe there was an incentive in some cases to place a student for a variety of reasons. But currently, now that districts are bearing 70%, I would have a hard time believing that there's any incentive to ever place a student. I think it's done very cautiously. And the other thing you have to look at, because I've been in a similar situation, we have 3 high school districts, correct? And we have 7 elementary, 1 unified, 2 unified, 1 high school only, and 7 that are elementary, right? So if you're a high school district that receives students from feeder districts, you had no voice in that matter until they come to you. And so if the student's succeeding in the non-public school, even if the high school thinks it's in their best interest, it's going to be difficult to make that change. So there's a whole lot of factors.
That's
going into
something
those
that the
policies.
local plan needs to be changed on, is that when a transition is going to occur between 8th grade to 9th grade, when it's an elementary school district to Chafee, that transition really should start in 7th grade. Is that in a non-public school? Why are they? Chafee needs to be notified. They need to know this so they can plan, and it can be planned that the child slowly exits the non-public school.
But
I mean, there's other ways
I
around
would
it.
argue that all of these placements are an individualized educational plan, team decision. And
Yes,
so we can't legislate anything like that in our local plan, or then the
No,
individual
but you can
issues
start
within-
the transition from middle school to high school, and you can start it at 7th grade. This way Chafee knows what they're getting. Because a lot of times they
And I'm
don't.
sorry, we're going on and on, but I would prefer to think that every IEP team looks at the placement of that child, is it appropriate or not, and that's what the decision is based on. So, did you have any more questions about?
No, just wanted to get a little overview.
Okay, so that takes us on to public comment, and we have 2. So, Linda Higgins, would you like to step up and please tell us what's on your mind?
I have to tell you before I start, we can barely hear you back there.
Oh, sorry.
It's really, really hard to hear. I would think maybe if you had some kind of a mic system, that would be really helpful when there are people, we have to close the door, because then we could sort of hear. I couldn't hear it all with the door open. So just for,
Thank you.
I just wanted to discuss the authority of the CAC and the fact that it's with the CAC, not the WESELPA admin, not the school boards. You guys are here to shape policies. You're to identify training needs and to provide input on local issues. Your position gives you the unique opportunity to influence change, and I hope you will do that. We need to see change in how special ed works. We even saw at the task force, an ex-official said, we need to revamp this. And hopefully we can start that from the bottom up. Special ed should be collaborative and should be student-centered. I haven't found that to be the case in most of the IEP meetings I've been to. Parents are treated as secondary most of the time. And as parents of children with special educational needs, we're the most important team member because our kids can't just blend and adapt. Our kids are special, and we know what their needs are better than anyone else. Our kids can't just adjust to others like other typical kids do. We can't just throw them in with any old teacher. They have to have a certain kind of teacher. My son had teachers that were really strict and really stern, and that doesn't work with his traumatic brain injury. He deals much better with a teacher who's really sweet and kind and nurtures him along. And so we need to be involved in those kinds of choices, and a lot of times we're not. We learn about, we have to become experts on our children. And some of the ways we do this is attending meetings, reading numerous reports, getting expert advice through medical evaluations, district evaluations, and often through independent educational evaluations, which are getting harder and harder to get. There are more and more things in place to stop us from getting actually independent evaluations. Oh, we need this, we need that, it has to do this, it has to do that. These are supposed to be independent. They were set up so we can get the information we need. We need to find a way to make it easier for parents while fighting the WESELPA's and district's natural tendency to avoid making things easier for us, because their natural tendency, because it's their job to save money, is to save money. So we need to make sure that we're influencing positively to make it easier for parents to do what's right for their kids. Your job is to advise the WESELPA administration, and you can't do that if you're on the side of the WESELPA administration of the district. You need to be on the side of the kids. And I think some are, but I have seen over the years that some don't really care about the kids. They really care about something else. So thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Christie has something to say about Community Advisory Committee Authority for Education Code.
Yes, I did help with a training over the weekend, as like most of you guys know, and the group that has this the organization that runs the training as far as sponsoring it is called the CAC Leadership Collaborative, and you can Google them, and they have a bunch of different documents that are relevant to CACs, and one of them is entitled the CAC's Authority to Fulfill Responsibilities. And I was talking to somebody earlier, and I said that authority word is a little too much, but I can't think of a better word for it, but I'll try. And I wanted to highlight a couple of things that are written on their two-page document. CACs are mandated by the state and federal laws and regulations that address parent involvement in special education. The CAC is designed in legislative spirit and intent to establish a local forum for active parent involvement. The CAC functions in advisory capacity to the local governing board and the WESELPA administration. The CAC is part of the governing structure of the WESELPA in that it acts as an advisory body. The WESELPA provides logistical and fiscal support for CACs to carry out their roles and responsibilities. The CAC, as a voting body, has the authority to fulfill the responsibilities that are defined for it in the local plan, which are also defined in Ed Code. It is important that CACs be clear on this in order for them to act in the true spirit of the legislative intent for CACs. And then I refer you to 56194 in the Education Code, because 4 of the 6 items in there have to do with our responsibility as a community advisory committee under the local plan. The CAC has the full authority to set its meeting agenda, facilitate its meetings, select meeting and training speakers, develop and update bylaws, establish plans and goals for the CAC, develop reports and recommendations to the WESELPA administration and governing board, and to carry out its other responsibilities that are defined for it in the local plan and the Education Code. The WESELPA provides fiscal and logistical support of the CAC, yet the CAC is to remain autonomous in order to act in advisory to the WESELPA and governing board. This level of autonomy enables the CAC to act in the true spirit of the legislative intent for CACs as a forum for active parent involvement. CACs are also subject to the Ralph M. Brown Act, and this requires that only the CAC voting membership may make decisions, commitments, or actions on behalf of the CAC. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you. That's it.
Can I ask a quick question? Did you guys have the light on when I was telling you about not being able to hear?
Right?
Have the one.
The light on?
I don't know. I
Would
believe
like-
so.
So
The
I
lights been on.
terminate the.
You mean the tape recorder?
No,
Yes,
the
as soon,
lights,
yes,
the
as soon as you
stuff.
started speaking, this goes on.
Is there something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, I didn't get to finish because I was telling you that it was hard for us to hear, and I don't think that was really part of my public comment. I was just wanting you to know that.
Oh, I see where you're coming from. Okay.
Would you please finish?
I know this is something.
Well, I just like to say,
No,
Chrissy,
that's
thank you for reading that, because I think it reinforces that we're doing all these things, so thank you.
I just wanted to encourage you that we have people that work for the districts and the self, their job is to save money. Our job is to advocate for kids. And so I think we get confused sometimes and we think we have to worry about saving money. We really have to worry about advocating for kids when we're in the CAC. One other thing, our district has had the same person since the CAC started, which was somewhere around, 8 or 10 years ago, I'm not positive. And there's been no one else. I think maybe you might want to include in the CAC bylaws some sort of term limits, because that one person doesn't represent many of us. I know she doesn't represent my views, she doesn't represent many of my friends' views, and that's okay. I don't represent her views, but we should not have the same person ever since the CAC started to all this time, and no one else gets an opportunity to represent other viewpoints. So I just wanted to encourage that. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, of course. Anybody else? I don't have a card, but.
What she said is a good point. You know, I really think as a CAC as a whole, we need to have Chino Unified School District look at the next time that a term is available for Chino, that they do utilize other methods to actually bring somebody else in, because Chafee did that and so did OMSD, because it seemed to be, you know, the same person applying. So they went out and sought out, you know, parents, teachers, asked them if they were willing to do it, because nobody was really filling out the forms and stuff. So they asked the special ed director, special ed teachers, all that, you know, do you know anybody that's willing to do it? Maybe you could talk to them, then bring them to the district, we'll talk to them. I think, you know, Chino really needs to do that, because it is the same person over and over, and, you know, everybody does have different views.
Is their method different than ours?
Every
But
district.
that,
per our
Chino's
bylaws.
gonna take care of itself, because that person's child's leaving the school. So, I mean, your problem is gonna be satisfied, but I understand it may happen again.
Yeah, because it did in the old days, before you even came, it was a problem. It was the same people over and over and over. And we kept saying there has to be
A
a
local
different
plan
method.
says that each district has a board adopted policy,
Mhm.
and so it's up to each district.
That's why
to
I'm
follow
saying,
their
as a
policy.
CAC, as a whole, we really need to tell Chino that, you know, we would like them to relook at their policy, how they do things, seek other ways of trying to get these people in, you know, other than the same person over and over and over, so it doesn't happen again. And it did happen again with OMSD. We had somebody that served another 2 terms, but wasn't really supposed to happen, but the person that was gonna take it decided at the last minute not. So we ended up having to utilize the other person, so.
And can I bring something else up as far as Mountain View? We still don't have a CAC representative, and I think there's a good size, I mean, no matter what size, I understand Mount Baldy, you know. I think we really need to get some representatives.
Susan, you had said that Mountain View and Mount Baldy were not choosing not to appoint someone to the CAC,
I've
correct?
had discussions.
Right.
But Mountain View is a good size.
I'm just saying, she's already talked to them, they refused to appoint someone. Can't do anything about it.
Yeah, we looked into that.
For
That's
next
part of
year,
our group,
since
too.
we're gonna start a new year, it would be good to.
So, but it comes time that Karen reminds the districts that, you
Yeah.
know, they need to look at the terms that are, the
Can I
terms
get
that
a
are
piece of
coming out.
paper? We're supposed to stand kind of separate from this WESELPA, like what she had been reading. That's why I keep saying the CAC. That's why I said maybe, I don't know, 5 meetings ago, Mountain View. You know, I can understand Mount Baldy, but not Mountain View. I asked for the executive committee to go before their board and ask for them to, you know, seek somebody for appointment.
And as
part of that, heading up that group, I can assure you that we have asked and given an invitation. I can't force them to appoint someone, but we have given them an invitation, said this is available.
Okay, but did
So,
the CAC, any part of the CAC, go to one of their board meetings and public comment and say, you know, I'm part of the CAC and we have noticed for the last 2 years that you haven't been participating and we would like somebody to participate. What's your policies? Can we get a copy of that? Could you initiate trying to do some interviews? I mean, we have to see them. They're not gonna do it if we just
So I
talk.
think it's a good, I think it's a good time for another.
I mean,
the invitation was
And they
extended.
do have a
to
new
the
director.
Yeah, they have
So maybe,
some, so,
okay, so.
so that actually will extend. Just wanted to remind.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
Thank you. It
Yeah.
doesn't hurt to ask
Doesn't hurt
again.
to ask, but I mean, but at the same time, are we in a
Right.
position to force anybody to
Right,
provide?
No, not
We're
And I
an
think-
advisory
No,
committee.
nobody's saying
Just
force.
like, just like, you know,
Whether your
We
policies.
can-
please don't
we
take
can ask
this.
them again.
No,
Please
a
don't
lot,
take
no,
this
no, no, a lot
offensively,
of boards don't even
I
know
think-
there's a policy, or there should be a policy in place. Do you really think they read this local plan? I mean, to be honest, have you guys read this local plan? I have, word for word, so many times it's, I mean, but their board members, I don't think so. Do you think their board members have really read their board policies? I guarantee you they have not.
So you guys, here's another fact you might want to consider. I think we're moving towards a gentler, kinder CAC. Yes. Yes. And so I think if we continue to show them the positive things we're doing, what they're missing out on, that we could encourage them to join because they're missing out. Not because they've got a seat they've got to have filled, but because we need their participation as one of our districts. You know, really focus on the positive, what we're all doing here, the trainings that we provide, the input they could have, the role they could play in the art and writing contest, all the rest. So I think we kind of need to repackage it and present it as like a really positive. Just my thought.
All right, we can move on to the discussion items. Local plan review, second read. Susan.
So we had a meeting this afternoon that was attended by 3 members to go over the local plan, and this is your opportunity if you have any questions. Otherwise, this is part of the process that we bring it forward for a first read, a second read of board policy, a second read, and then approval.
Does anybody have any questions?
So we'll do this one. So, how many of you have read and cover to cover the fiscal application plan in the packet? Christy has, and Christy did participate in one of the meetings. There was a booklet that got together to look at the fiscal allocation plan, and as you know, a lot of things have changed. Remember last year, they changed the, RSPS funding was rolled right into the 8602 base, so it's all just special ed money now. The low incidence funding used to be that we had a little pocket of money for services to hire like whale transcribers or interpreters for the deaf, and the rest of the money we got for low incidence was for equipment. Low incidence disabilities, there's 4 of them: blind, deaf, blind, and severely orthopedically impaired. And because those types of disabilities do not occur much in the general population, we get additional funding of $27 per student with a low incidence disability. Sometimes the equipment, like imagine a computer with a brailler in it, can cost thousands of dollars. And so we get about $300 per year per student that has a low incidence disability. Well, that money was combined, so now we have flexibility. If we need to hire an interpreter or brailleist or whatever, we can use the money either for equipment or for services. So we had to reflect all these changes that have occurred or any decisions that we made about money locally in this local plan. Well, Tim Chapter is our new fiscal analyst, so first year and he got to revise the plan. And when the work group got together, we decided it really wasn't very user-friendly the way it was set up, because it had all these acronyms and the history and everything all at the front of the plan. So we decided if we got right to it, how is it that money flows in and how is it distributed and what are our guiding principles to expend it, then people could go right to it and it would be a tool. And then if they wanted to know the history of how this had all been in the past, they could refer to that in the back. The other thing that he did, let's pick a page here. If you go, well, so it starts out, page A2, talking about our funding allocation model, talks about the various sources of revenue and how they are determined. And starting on page B1, it talks about, have you ever seen our WESELPA funding exhibits? It's like, probably 25 pages, all of numbers and columns showing how the money flows to the districts and for the different fees that were assessed by the County Office of Education, that sort of thing. Well, those pages are numbered and lettered. So where you see at the top of B2, Allocation Distribution Exhibit I, Schedule B1. If you were to get that whole packet of all of that, you would go to the one that's Exhibit I and Schedule B1. So he's cross-referenced very nicely so that if you're looking at those spreadsheets and you want to see what is this, then you can go back to the description. So it's really a very nice job he's done to clean it all up. The XPOT that Christy asked about earlier is on B16. And so you can see it talks about contribution, the return, all that sort of thing. So if you ever wanted to know anything and everything about how our funding works, you can find it in here. And then as changes are made again this year, like we project the governor is going to give a 0.86% COLA, it's a cost of living adjustment. So we'll have to describe how that works in our plan. The local plan has to indicate that we have a fiscal application plan, but it doesn't have to be in the local plan. Otherwise, every time we revise this document, it would have to be put into the local plan. We would have to send our local plan for approval of the CDE. So this way acknowledges that we have it. So after you read it, if you have any questions, call Tim. No.
I have a question. What IEP program are we using? Are we using SACE? We're still using SACE?
And we adopted the state forms.
Oh, okay, but we're still using SACE then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
About 40 to 60% of the districts in the state use SACE, which is a web-based IEP program. So if I'm a speech therapist, or once upon a time I was a speech therapist, if I had a student, I could go in and type everything into their IEP, and then that student moves to Mo's district. My person who is the webmaster or whatever can then take my student, move it from me to Mo, and it's fabulous. The students move across the state. We don't have to wait for physical records to appear, and then when we get them, it's already set up. We can go right in and do what we need to. So it's a fabulous system.
I thought you guys were getting rid of SACE.
No,
I didn't understand why.
No.
Okay.
Unless you know something we don't know.
Some social directors don't.
Okay.
You want number 3?
D3, Community Advisory Committee meeting. We have a training coming up Tuesday, April 15th. Edith and the group have been planning this. Guard Department is going to do a training on social skills. So we're really looking forward to that. And then I'd like to skip ahead if I may to D5 because you need to know that, remember we had the training on Common Core, and by design, good night.
Thank you.
By design, it ended up being a little lengthier than the trainers had planned, and so the only way we found, looking at calendars, that we could fit the second half of that in is on the same evening from 3:30 to 5:30. And Karen has revised.
Everybody
it's
has.
the one in your packets is 5:30 to 7:30, so replace it with this one. 3:30 to 5:30, we will have the continuation of the Common Core, and then 5:30 to 7:30, we'll have the social skills training, so it'll be like a mini conference, 2 hours and 2 hours. There was just no way working around calendars and anything else that we could do that. We didn't think you'd want them side by side the same evening, because then people would have to choose. And so this was a date that both the trainers had available, and so we will be offering the second half of that evening. The structure of the training will be somewhat different than it was.
We're gonna use cards?
Well,
That's a great idea. Let's use cards.
Yeah,
It would be
I
much
mean, when I
more-
walked
it
in,
would be
I
much
saw
more-
the bombshell just getting worse.
It'll just be a sharing out of information with the opportunity to submit questions if they can respond
At
to
the
them.
end, yeah.
I just have one comment,
We got it, cards.
or question. I don't know how this would be, but I've done the interpreting and so on, and I really enjoy doing it. But I'm not a professional. I only was trained for 20 minutes with Olivia from OMSD years ago. And is there any way, Susan, that you can, I mean, how are these people being trained, the interpreters? And I've also, and don't take this wrong, but we both experienced this at OMSD, but
Too loud.
the interpreters are not using the devices the appropriate way, the way I was taught for 15 minutes. I mean, if you can hear the interpreter from here all the way to the front, then you might as well just do it without the machine. But I feel that, are they being
People said
trained
so.
different, or is this like because of a sanitary thing? Because I feel that, first of all, I feel bad for our English-speaking parents who totally cannot concentrate because all that's going on. Second, the same, and then third, I mean, again, I'm not a professional, but I don't use the machines that way. They have a volume, the interpreters they have a volume, and the parent, they have a second volume, so volume would be no problem. So is there any way that you can ask?
She was way too loud, and you're right, a lot of times she wasn't putting that
Not at
totally
all.
over her, maybe that, because other people did specify that they could hear the interpreter better sometimes than the presenters.
But I
And
know
I
it's
apologize, that whole evening was a comedy of errors, in many regards, because we were set up in a room that was way too small. I don't think that was the room we originally had, right?
No, it was, we weren't expecting.
That's the hugest turnout we ever had, 60 people.
which
And
means
then
we're getting our flyers out
Everybody's
there.
interested
Yay.
in Common
Yay.
Core and the budget.
I was like excited because we saw so many.
There was a large presentation
The
the
next
next morning that
morning,
was
so
already
they
set up,
couldn't
so we
break
had
it down
no
into
option to have a larger room. Then we had a huge crowd of Spanish speakers, which I'm glad we did, but you're right. Then we had the issues with who could hear what, and then people were so crammed in, and then just the design that evening would have been perfect in another setting, but when you're trying to share so much information about a new topic like Common Core, I think you all would have been much better served by just hearing the information.
I mean, I wanted to take it away from her and say, let me do it, because
Yeah.
I would have not made it. He can do it.
And I think the trainers, they wanted input from all of you to kind of assess where everybody was, but I think it kind of then caused us to not be able to get through the material that evening. So
I don't think they have ever dealt with parents where some parents will take control and you can't let that happen, and they didn't know how to cut them off. That's why you start using the cards, because I was listening to people on the hallway, they were kind of getting upset because they wanted it to continue, and they really couldn't handle their kids,
Half
so.
the people left.
And I'm just wondering, Peter isn't here tonight, did he go to that fashion design school? No, I'm kidding.
But overall, I was happy to see so many parents and so many people. That told me we're getting the message out there. They are getting their flyers and they're getting their information. So, but that is a big concern of mine in our future presentations, that we can have our interpreters do a better job. And same with
That's
them.
what
You'll see it
There
tomorrow.
were a lot of
Tomorrow.
lessons learned that night.
Yeah.
This
And
is an
I wonder
outside
if you-
agency that we have come in. I can,
And let's talk about how you can.
I got a question.
Oh,
Well, and that's what I was gonna bring up too. I wanted to bring that up. I think I even mentioned it to you guys that night. I think as the CAC, your committee is putting that on, and you guys come up with these trainings. I think we should talk to them prior to, we as a CAC should come up with a set of guidelines of how we'd like our meetings to be run. Because a lot of parents, they come in, they got, right after school, they haven't eaten dinner, they wanna get the information. And with so many people just blurting out comments or going off of the topic of what the presentation is
That's
about,
what bugged me the most.
the parents leave, they
Off
leave.
topic.
And so
And they don't come back.
and then they don't wanna come back. And then we get upset when, oh, how come the parents don't show up, or how come we don't get enough people? And then they kinda go, well, why bother? So I think if we were
We
to
need
come
to
up
do
with
the
a
cards.
set
We
of
can do
guidelines,
both.
right,
They get their presentation, and at the end,
right.
half an hour is dedicated, or longer if it ends.
Well, but at the same time,
What you're saying
if,
is valid, because we all felt like at the time there was lots that we wanted to say. Mo stepped up and said something, I said something, we were like, but we didn't feel like we could take control of it, and maybe
But we
we
should.
feel like we can.
we should,
But I
and
think
if we,
that
take
training was
it any worse
very
than that.
different than any of the
Right,
other CACs that we have, and there was a lot of group participation. Whereas like
Right.
with the one Garth's gonna do, he's gonna present information, there might be a little conversation, but not the
Stand
share
in the
And
together.
we'll
Well,
probably only have.
That was a big
right,
problem.
but I think what I'm
Good
speaking,
idea.
what I'm trying to address too at the same time is that I think a lot of it has to do with what the forum is about.
Yeah.
There was a lot of comments that weren't about what
Yeah.
we
It
were
was
talking
off
about.
topic.
Personal
Yeah.
stories.
Right,
One
and
parent
that's-
got upset, and that's what I said.
Right.
Personal stories. not
And so I
politics.
think if we move to, like you said, a card, and you know what, just say, to respect everybody's time, we're gonna do a format of all questions will be done at the end. Questions and comments, so whoever wants to stay can
Write an
stay.
email down so we
Because
can
at least if you
know
get,
we can't talk
if it
about
takes you 2 hours, 2 full hours,
Uh-huh.
and you get through all the material in an hour and a half, and you stay an extra half hour for questions, it'd be better than waiting 2 hours and not getting through everything. And, yeah, so either way, I'd rather wait 2 hours and get through everything
Well, you
instead
know the
of
saying,
not.
learn by our mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We learned a lot.
And this doesn't just happen with the CACs putting out, I mean,
It's
the
everything.
school districts have this problem. When I go to a school board function, oh my gosh, when they start talking about budget, you will get somebody and then they go
Right.
way off of the topic, and then, and then we're just sitting there and it's like, wait
I
a
mean,
second.
at the same time, they have
And
valid,
the
they would have a
cards.
valid comment,
The
but it's just not
cards.
that forum.
Yeah.
It's not the forum to discuss that specific
I
topic.
think Israel is right, as basically the speakers wanted to be as polite as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't
You
think
know, they want to be
you
polite.
They didn't know
We
what to do.
CAC also want to always be very polite to parents, because God forbid if we're not polite to those, to parents, our CAC, that's what we're here for. And so I think they were also trying to, be as polite as possible, which is
And that's why
right.
Peter would say, thank you, and try to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
next time maybe they can also have cards and say, oh, you have a question, here's a card, I need to continue on with the presentation. Fill this out, and then, us CAC members need to go around and,
To the night and
But you know,
search by a whole bunch of
remember when I
cards.
first came and I was meeting with you all, those of you that were here, which is few, I handed out those group norms. And maybe it would be okay at the beginning of a training too to say.
always do that.
We are
We want to
CAC,
control.
and we do have some things that we do just out of respect for each other.
Yes.
And, yeah.
We should, move to, like, do
And
that,
maybe we
actually.
can have the chair of the committee introduce the speaker. And you can say that, if that works.
Yeah, because you always have to say the norms in the beginning and have those cards, or else you never know what the presentation's gonna
We'll
be.
definitely do that, the cards, and we'll introduce, and then you'll check on the interpreter.
And what do you do about the parents that are bringing a lot of children?
Yeah.
That was also problematic.
We have on the flyer,
I know it says no childcare, but turning them away.
Well, we
Put
can-
all the kids in a
That
separate
would be
room.
part of the norms. If you have a mobile computing device, you need to have headphones on.
It's-
Yeah.
I
That
think-
was one of the bigger
Yeah, and I
problems.
think it would have been okay, Christy, because in the past when we have the kids anyway, we have the big room, the bigger room, the kids have been in the back doing their little things.
yeah.
And it's been fine, like when we did a couple of presentations.
That
That transition one,
Yeah.
like they were in the back and they had crayons, they had their little things, and Karen, you went up and got them, I think, markers and a whole bunch of stuff, and they were fine in the back, so I think it was that it was very crowded.
Yeah.
So, but I was
And
happy
the
to see
game,
so many
and the interpreter was so loud that the child kept turning up the game.
Right.
Yes.
He was all, hey, you're talking
Okay.
But we could make a statement, like when the kids do have electronics, in the beginning, if you have children here, if they have electronics, please make sure that they wear headphones.
Or silence.
Do you think it would be rude to have a little laminated thing, like please bring your volume down for telephones or any electrical devices and just maybe put it up? Because I find that just so.
Look, they
Maybe
answered the phone and started a conversation after she complained about
we
the
just
different
post
topic.
Here's some people are very visual, and so you get up to
I was like-
speaker, maybe we could have one slide.
No, I seriously
that
think, are
just
you
goes
kidding?
over the
You're
I'm
having a
thinking for the
conversation.
people who get here late and they don't get to hear the instructions.
Yeah, we just print
We
it out
just
and make
put
it
a
the
little
best.
laptop.
No, that's actually good to have a card like that, and, you know, if somebody's not, you know, here.
Sign like that? Yeah. Yeah.
If we added the flyer so that they're prepared, because I don't always have my son's headphones with me, but I would bring them if I did that.
Well, it was
Yeah,
never.
childcare not provided, please provide quiet activities for your children if you must bring them.
No, I,
Yeah.
No, give them the idea,
Just-
okay,
Yeah.
I want them to play this device, I'm gonna bring headphones.
Multi-layers on the flyer, sign at the desk, where they sign in.
Let's do it.
I think that with our little signs up, they'll know that if they bring their toys or their devices, they'll just bring the volume down and then.
Because a lot of times, we don't have the same parents coming time after time, so it's good to have
And you know,
that
we all,
information every
most of
time.
us have special needs children. We know that, how to, we have to entertain them. We're very creative, you know. yeah.
We
So
have
we're having this at 3:30 or 5:30, right?
Before, Erin has gone through and looked at various dates on district's calendars and stuff, and we have not only the tentative meeting dates for next year, but also the tentative training topics.
Yes, and should I speak about that? No, not yet. Oh, okay.
So if there's any problems with any of these dates, let me know.
Yeah, we have to look out for the.
Does anybody have a concern on the date at this time? Okay, let's moving on to the committee reports and, Christie.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate what Susan had brought up earlier as far as the public forum and the special education task force close by in Riverside on the 17th. And if you can't go to the whole day part of it, the forum itself open to the public that day is from 4 to 5:30. That would be really good to try to make that. And they're supposed to have a public forum the next morning as well.
10 to 11:30.
Yeah, just in the morning part.
I'm sorry, where was that again?
It's at the California School for the Deaf on
That's
Riverside.
HORAC, 4th Street in Riverside.
And then when Linda was giving public comment, she was referring to, in her public comment, to comments that were made by a former administrator at one of these special education task forces. And an article came out about her comments and what she said. And what I highlighted from what she said is Parker regretted a system that she said had a history of labeling children as barely able to learn, rather than revamping the way teachers provide instruction in reading, writing, speech, and math, particularly for the vast number of students with learning disabilities. So I have a link to that.
And she was the state director of special education.
So if anybody's interested in getting a link, you can shoot me an email. I'm fine with receiving emails. The other thing I wanted to bring up was AB 2057, introduced by Assemblywoman Susan Manila, is the problem that 7,000 severely disabled students across the state face the prospect of taking both the CAPA as well as the pilot replacement test, being developed by a national collaborative. So
The replacement test of the CAPA?
basically being double tested,
this
these
isn't-
7,000 students.
I don't know anything about that.
This is an urgency bill, because think about it, they have a 12-week window this year, isn't it?
For testing, yes.
For testing.
You just do
And
the
testing is starting anytime now, and as it stands right at the moment, all kids who need the alternative assessment are slated to take the CAPA. They're asking that California approve that instead, the kids can take the NSYNC, which is the National and State Center Collaborative, which is a much different test. It's computer-based. It assesses each of the domains for the severe population and has rigor and content that's appropriate to the different levels. So Bonilla has asked for support from the state SELPA organization and sponsorship, which we did give on Friday. And so they're going to try to pass it through as an urgency vote so that our students who would typically take the CAPA can take during the pilot year this computer-based test so that, you know how this is the year to test the test and not only to test the kids, that we can get feedback on how this test goes for kids.
I thought they were taking the count still.
That's what I'm saying, this would give them the option to take the INSYNC instead.
So,
Right now, if a district decides to pilot the INSYNC, the kids still have to take the CAPA. You know how kids don't have to take the STAR, but they're taking the Smarter Balance? So the analogy would be if you decided to give Smarter Balance this year, you would still have to give the STAR. If you decide to give the INSYNC, you still have to give the CAPA the way it stands at the moment.
because I know that they had no assessment for the kids for the CAP. You know, that, they kind of forgot them. They didn't know what to do.
And they went to grade 3 for general ed, and the special ed population taking the Smarter Balance doesn't remain for the CAPA because it's not part of the statewide assessment in law. They still have to take it in second grade when other kids don't have to take it in second grade.
So this new program, I mean, is it a good one that'll give true data? I mean, does anybody know anything about it?
Yes, there was a SELPA director in my former SELPA that went to, I want to say Atlanta Place somewhere in the south, and they actually brought in educators to look at the content and the rigor of each of the items on the tests at various levels. And so it's based on evidence-based research. It's been fully vetted by people, that are experts in the field. I think it holds a lot of potential. And so instead of us just holding on to our California devised test, the CAPA, it would be better to give our kids an opportunity to take that test this year and not have to be double tested. I think that's the issue, is the double testing. Why should our kids have to have double testing?
Well, in California, we just got notification Monday that we don't have to take both tests. Because it was still, we just got the waiver that says, no, we don't have to take CST. That all we have to do is
Wow, so
SI.
everything is behind.
Everything is behind.
Wow.
Absolutely everyone.
Christiana, you did that.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to point out is there was a report released. I have a link to it. School districts across the country must balance the risk of utilizing restraints and seclusion as permitted with the goal of providing a safe learning environment for all students and staff. This paper provides tips on how to minimize risks and an exposure checklist on the topic of restraints and seclusions in schools. Happy to email you if you need that copy of that.
Send it to me. I haven't read it.
Okay, these new and then lastly on this list, these new California guidelines, which were released by Torlakson, detail what parents should do if they suspect their child is being abused at school. So I have a link to that. My committee members are individually working on setting up dates to go and meet with their legislators.
I want to add to that, Christy, if I can.
Sure.
I have already contacted both my Assemblyman Rodriguez and Senator Norma's schedulers. It is not easy.
Yeah, because they're running for different offices too.
Extremely busy, so it took a few weeks of connecting with the schedulers,
Yeah.
asking for they are gone most of the time. They can only meet on Friday. And as of this point, it'll be Liz and myself and Susan will be visiting Rodriguez, Assemblyman Member Rodriguez on March 21st. I actually got an email today after a couple of weeks that there's a conflict of schedule and I could only have this day, and then later on I got another email that I'm so sorry, but because of this, we can only do this day, so we moved it up like 2 weeks. So we're going on the 21st at 4 p.m. And at this point, I'm like, whatever they have, I'm taking off work. I know Susan's probably, hopefully join us, and Liz, I don't, but, I'm going to tell her, bring your kids, who cares? It is not easy, but I think if we have to do it now, because May will be crazy. And the same with Senator Norma Torres, but it's not easy. to get appointments, so when you do, just expect that they'll give you one date available, and then just go for it. Just really go for it, and like if nobody's available, I'll just take Christy and myself, or, Christy and Liz, so. But that will be done this month.
Great.
for my-
And Torres is running a congressional campaign, so she's probably busy too.
Right, but I made it a point that we want to meet with them personally, because
Right.
they can give you a representative anytime, but I think the goal is to meet with them personally.
Definitely.
So that's whatever they give you at the last minute,
That's right.
if you want to, it's not easy,
Mhm.
but they will, like I said, just go for it. In May, it's all gone. But I just wanted to let you know also.
Great.
Art and writing,
Oh, I wanted to chime in on to the
chime.
the federal level, the bill HR 4136, make sure you guys follow that. Fully funded special education. I mean, that's a big issue, and if it's looking on the federal level, maybe they woke up because weren't we supposed to be 40% by 1986? I mean, if you read, I mean, it's ridiculous. Now they're finally waking up.
And Senator Huffman is the contact on that.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's it. And then another thing about the committee that's going to be at the school for the vet. It's really important if you can make it. I'll tell you right now, I doubt I can make it because my facility's closing down and people are just a mess over there. But it makes a difference. When I went to the Blue Ribbon Autism Committee and I followed through on that and I talked at the public, it was an eye-awakening for those committee members to realize really what affects us normal parents that don't have the money that other people have to pay for services, which they had no idea. I mean, they were way off base of what, the common parent and the student would really need. So it's really important that they hear from you. Because a lot of times these committee members, they're well off. So they don't even think like we think, like, how are we going to pay for these ABA provider, and like regional center, it's going back and forth of who's going to pay the co-payment and things like that. What they don't realize to them is no big deal, a co-payment but for the common parent that has ABA 3 times a week, I mean, that co-payment 3 times, it's a lot of money. They don't think like that, so it's really important that as many parents as possible go down there, and teachers too. They have no idea really what impacts a teacher unless they've been, they've worked their way up and they've been a teacher. Then they kind of have an idea. Otherwise, they don't. So, I mean, it is important to go to the committee and actually, make a statement so they know what impacts us.
Art and writing.
The art and writing contest, Karen, do we have any idea on how many submissions that we got so far?
I don't have a final count, it was over 100 and I think 60 so far.
Okay.
When are we
I
judging?
don't know yet.
And
I
how
just
many?
got this on Friday, I had a lot of them come in on Monday because I did district mail, jet mail, and I said I'd accept any of that, so.
Okay, so does it look like we have more than last year, or?
I can't even comment until I look at last year's numbers and
Okay.
there's a lot of them.
Do you have a date for meeting when you're?
Well, that's what I'm
Everybody
getting to is a date for a meeting so we can actually judge them. And I think it always works out that 2 hours is actually perfect if enough of us show.
It was more than enough time last time. I liked the way we did it last time. It was better organized than the year before, where it was in piles already, and then we just took a pile.
Yeah, Karen put them in piles and then we.
Well, I liked it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the same way.
For an hour.
And I think we were okay in time, and then the daddy came at the last minute, remember, we saw the video. And that was the day of our presentation.
Even with the teachers, every single time a DVD or a flash drive doesn't work.
And I think, wasn't that the date, that was the same date as our April meeting, right?
I can't do it.
No, that was because after that we had our meeting. So that was.
Can't have it at the April.
No, I think
I
it
know.
was
Sooner because
I think it was
have a lot
the
of
year,
inventory.
I think it was the year before that we did it
So I
that
think the
way.
best thing would be to ask like Karen, because she knows with the timing with the invitations and the awards. And when-
I was gonna ask,
Like within
is
the next
SELPA shutting down for spring break? Okay,
Mentally, maybe.
okay, then I think we have to do it sometime before the end of March then.
That's next week.
Next week? I think you're right. It's gonna be before the end of March right now, so.
When do you think you can have?
Tell me when you want it.
Okay.
Okay, when you want it. Like the end of next week, if not the beginning of the first week back from spring break. I have the 20th available. That's not available, busy.
That's my oldest son's.
What time are you thinking, Mo?
Oh, what
What time are we thinking?
we're open 7:30 to 4:30.
Oh, yeah.
I have the 20th available, but not after 6:30 p.m.
We
Then
only
I'll
have
be
until,
available.
we only have until 4:30.
Oh,
So when
okay,
do-
I have Thursday.
And that's the thing, we might as well stick to, if we can, stick to the operating hours of SELPA if we can.
Yeah.
Um,
So that would be next, no.
But you guys
no,
came in during the daytime, I thought.
That would be in a couple, yeah, that would be next week, right?
It's next week,
Yeah, that would be next week.
next week though.
That would be-
Yeah, I'm not,
Next Friday, I could. probably
Why
just
don't we
the
do-
24th, that's better.
do the week of the 19th to the 23rd, pick one of those days.
That's not a week.
Right, that's
Oh,
next week.
the 19th is a Wednesday. Are you looking
Look
at
at
March?
I'm sorry, the 26th to the 30th. I'm telling you, with my,
Still
with
not.
Latterman closing down and he had somebody commit suicide, it's like,
Look at March, I think you're
it's
maybe
just like
not
a
on March.
mess. And then some.
So the week of the 24th, you like better?
I'm like May.
Oh, you're looking at
That's
May?
how stressed I am.
That's
with
gonna
my-
be-
Oh, my goodness.
Probably the 24th through the 28th, one of those days.
Tuesdays or Wednesdays are best for me if we're coming early. But that's just me, and I can adapt, so. Anybody,
Tuesdays are usually good for me.
anybody like the 25th?
Yeah.
What
Tuesdays are
time,
good for me.
I'm booked all day at work, but maybe I can do something. like
11
that.
to 1?
11 to 1.
No?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
available
I can,
Tuesday too.
I can arrange my schedule.
11 to 1?
Reschedule a client.
Tuesday the 25th, 11 to 1. Tuesday the 25th. Everybody's invited. Israel over there.
Can't attend, my husband's having a procedure, sorry. He's at the
Good
doctor's
excuse.
that day.
Unfortunately.
I could do the 24th, I could probably do the 26th, just not the 25th. I am his driver.
Call him Yellow Cab.
Which Kaiser just says.
Just kidding.
He cannot
Oh,
drive.
Kaiser is strict.
Okay, so
They won't put him in a taxi.
Parent and Community Education Committee, Edith.
Red flag.
All right, well, here is the, we already covered at the presentation, so, but here is the tentatively, topics that we talked about at our previous meetings. And as you know, we went by the survey that we did on 2012 from parents from all districts and the topics that they were suggesting. So we put them all together, and we have Chino, Upton, OMSD, JP. So these were actually the topics that we have, from the list that we haven't covered. So this is the reason for that, and we did have a meeting, and yeah, go
I
ahead.
just have a question. On the February 10th presentation for 2 hours, auditory and visual, is there any possibility, because it's so long, I don't know if that, I mean, I don't know that much about it, so maybe that can hold a 2-hour training, but could we do / another one of those other situations that people have, like for
That's-
instance, auditory visual / dyslexia? 'Cause there's 2 hours, I just know with
Well,
my.
yeah, and we can have another meeting and work on it and add on to that.
Just wondering if that makes sense. I was just looking at it, thinking that's a long time for auditory visual. Just a comment, just a thought.
Another fabulous thing you might want to consider at some point, we have an AT, assistive technology certification program, which is coming across the state, right?
So we can
And so our
slash.
trainers could train on some great strategies for using technology. Love tech.
I can present on AT,
See, sold.
on low mid and high tech.
Well, the only reason I bring it up is I put a presentation on and it wasn't enough meat.
So that would be something we can add
Just
to that one, to the February
a
10th.
thought.
Would that make it a
That would
good
really make you
combination?
know as you show that.
Just a thought.
So,
Don't forget to pass out the cards.
yes, Chris.
So are SELPA people presenting for pretty much all the presentations then?
I don't think we have determined yet, but we wanted to determine our topics so we can have our brochures ready. and not like last year, you know how they were not.
Yeah.
Although next year
Well,
we
we
might.
also have to have
Uh-huh.
the presenter ready, because we can't advertise on a brochure if we don't have a presenter committee.
You mean on our yellow brochure?
She just wants to say what we're gonna
The
present.
topics.
You have to say who at the
Well,
same
we gotta
time.
make sure if we're going to,
So I will
So
have
we
to call the
coordinate
meeting for
everything.
that. So then I'll need to call the meeting for that, so we can talk
This
about
would
it.
be SELPA probably.
Right,
The
the
IEP
IEP.
forms. And then
Yes,
AT also,
it's
they have,
technology.
everybody in the SELPA does AT too.
And then the behavior that when we were gonna look into the parenting, remember?
A smaller version of the.
Pardon? Clinical parent training, the smaller version of that, that doesn't have it.
So it is
So that
broad
would be,
presentation.
that would be,
Nice to have up here. Only because they do it up here in September and they do it in February, and it'd be nice if people had an intro to what it was. So could you like switch those, or?
which one?
I would like to see the parent training one up here, because I know I offer it to my parents all the time as an administrator. You know, you're having difficulty, and it would be nice to have an overview for parents before it actually happens.
When does the first one start in the fall, Karen?
August or September,
October.
typically September, and then
That'd be ideal, have it.
Well,
The
we
second one's in
just always
February.
have the
With the
IEP,
behavior?
and in October, or in the beginning of the year, because we have our new parents who are new to IEPs, and we
Wouldn't
want
they
them to
already
become
have them by then?
familiar to
IEPs,
the
they,
new ones.
I have a new parent today that has a new IEP, so it happens all year.
So
Well, that would be up to, yeah,
With a newly identified student, or?
Sure.
So they're brand new
Yeah.
IEPs?
so that would
Because I
be up
don't
to the,
anticipate much change to the forms for next year. I was sitting in on the forms committee last week at state stuff, I don't think there'll be significant changes.
What does it mean, IEP form / behavior plan?
they have the new behavior plan documents, the new paper,
Oh,
the new
okay.
forms, Chrissy, that we went over them, but we didn't have enough time, remember, when we had our IEP?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it just make sense to put the IEP forms and stuff at the end of the year so people could get ready for what's coming?
So,
Instead of at the beginning
so
when
do it
it's already done.
like Donna said, in April,
Yeah.
so do it in April like Donna said, and then, like she was suggesting, right?
That would be
Or
nice,
in
because I
February.
know
The new papers.
at schools, the big rush is right after Christmas time parent conference. And because the teachers are
Of
saying,
February.
oh my gosh, it's time, this kid isn't making progress, we need to refer him for special ed. Or that's when the parents are saying, oh my gosh, is my kid gonna go on to the next year, I won't make it tested. So I like that April time for the
So,
IEPs.
April?
Right. But annuals happen, like my district is whenever across the year.
Close to the birthday time for us.
Yeah, it just depends on each
So
district.
Donna is suggesting that we move our training, our behavior training to October, and moving our IEP presentation to April.
your behavior training, I thought your IEP training, which, I'm sorry.
It's IEP behavior
Our
intervention.
behavior plan,
The seventh is
April,
going down,
and,
it's coming up.
That's what, okay, that's what I have.
right,
They just both say behavior.
just kind of switch.
I like it.
That's it? That's all I
Yeah,
have.
that's it.
Because then hopefully for the second session in February, when the clinical parenting training comes, more parents will attend that one. They'll already be halfway through the October one, but it will enlighten people, I hope.
Edith, anything else to report?
No, so are we, so we're just gonna bring this up next time, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so Public Information and Membership Committee, I have been getting back some feedback from different districts and people reporting of how we can get more information to them. Like, for instance, my district is going to, rather than do an all-call or have us piggyback on their outgoing newsletters, they just want to create their own email for everybody with an IEP. So they're going to give us our own special email, so anybody in my district, anytime I give them information, they'll have their own tag. So that's what Altamola's deciding to do. Israel, you just said that you guys said you can piggyback and they'll make an all-call for you. So we'll be able to see how that goes. Does anybody else have anything to report on those things from your
Yeah,
district?
I emailed you, right? I forwarded you from Central.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So Alcaloma's just gonna provide you each kid with an IEP's email?
Not providing me, they're gonna create it, so I will get it to them.
Gotcha, I was gonna say, how can you do that?
But they're gonna create their own email. She said it won't be a problem because they have that for the GATE students,
Right.
and they'll do that for the special ed, or anybody with an IEP. even if they're in gen ed, because I told her it's more than just or special ed. It's anybody. We service a lot more. So they were very accommodating.
I might pitch that to them too.
Internet? Phone. Internet. They prefer that to phone. I said we could give it a try. We'll see how yours goes.
Sharon, I'm so sorry, can you repeat that really quick? I was writing the presentation. Can you repeat what you just said?
With regards to Altaloma, so what Altaloma has decided to do, or offered to do, is to create an email that goes to everybody in Altaloma School District that has an IEP. So when we provide them with these things, they'll continue with the flyers that we give them, giving them to they distribute them to the RSP teachers, and speech teachers, and special ed teachers. But they'll, in addition, have an email that goes out to just those individuals. Just another layer, and we'll see if it makes a difference. But it's something we didn't have before.
And I had a meeting with my director, and I brought out all the points and suggestions that were brought up last time about, the sending any possible a call or so. So she's looking into some of those. But I will also email her this suggestion.
Okay, review of parking lot items? None?
Well, one was brought up by somebody in public comment about microphones, being in here so they couldn't hear back here.
Mics aren't wired for this room at all.
Maybe we could do it in a different room?
Was it better to hear after the door was closed and,
It was better after the door was closed, it's still difficult, especially that side.
You can't hear.
Well, and what we may want to do is not have our backs to them.
I know,
Just be
I never
outside.
like the seating arrangement, I want to see.
No matter what, in this room, because
The
according to
acoustics aren't
the
good at all.
superintendent council, you cannot hear back there.
Right,
I cannot hear, and I continuously tell them not.
right.
It worked well last year when we were over there and had a use
Yeah,
for us.
maybe we can try that.
There's
in
just
the other
something
room.
about this room, and especially if the
Because it's
heater
so
or the
hot,
air
because
turns
it's
on,
hot.
forget it.
Because
the
it's
one
so
they,
hot.
Oh, it's awful.
okay. We have a few extra minutes. Public, would you like to introduce yourselves and tell us where you're from?
I'm Stephen Kemp. I'm with, my son goes to the Etiwanda School District.
Hi, Stephen, thank you for coming. Oh, so you know that, and this is
And
Leah,
then
just
I
for your
think I
district.
had a question. Can I ask? In regards to the low incidence funds, you guys said that it was merged with some other,
There were two pots of low incidence funding.
okay.
Come to find out, I didn't go into all the nitty-gritty details, but there are actually three. Because unbeknownst to us, 6 SELPAs in the state were receiving low incidence funds for ROP students. And we don't quite know how that all works, but each SELPA has a line item this year for low incidence funds for ROP, as well as what was previously low incidence for services. So if you needed a person to transcribe Braille, or if you needed an interpreter for ASL or whatever. And then the bigger pot was for equipment.
Okay.
And so they said, let's give people flexibility. Because that little pot, truly, for services, really didn't buy you very many services. It was so tiny. So if we put flex into it by combining the two, then you have the discretion to decide how you're going to spend it. But it still has to be in the IEP of any student that receives low incidence services or equipment.
Now, I seen with the budget from last year's low incidence, it was carried over to the new year's. And it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like $450 million was.
Oh, no.
Because
I think if
that was the,
I don't have it with me, but I think this year our funding might be about 200,000.
Okay.
I think we have, don't quote me on this, 724 students with low incidence disabilities. And when you multiply it by the 327,
yeah, that's why it didn't make sense.
it would be about 200.
So maybe I'll
But
go
what
with
happens,
that.
because it's state money, we're not obligated to spend it in 27 months like we do with federal money, so we can carry over from year to year. And so we always try to spend old money first, but it can keep, adding up. But that's a good thing, because if districts all of a sudden had high cost low incidence needs, there'd be a pot of money available for that purpose.
Thank you for the clarification.
But we don't know what the ROP one is, so we're just kind of holding that money till we get clarification. Oh, and in our own particular SELPA, in previous years, there was a contract, and Karen can help me with the details, with Pacific Coast proposed hearing, I think to go in and look at the ear molds of kids in the deaf program. And so rather than have that be a county expense and part of the fee for service that the districts pay for having the students served there, it now is part of our low incidence expenditure.
So it hit the budget a little bit.
But that's okay, all those kids are getting it again.
When you find out about the ROP, can you forward it to me? Because I'm sure it's about transitioning to adulthood, and I'm interested.
Yeah, but why would only 6 SELPAs in the whole state, and they're even trying
They're
to find out which
selfish, and they
6.
didn't share.
No, no, no.
They didn't share the
Why did
wealth.
the government allocate this to 6, and nobody seems to know which 6, it's just they know it was 6, so.
And nobody's speaking up or stepping up saying who
This
they are.
mystery will be resolved tonight. And did you want to ask?
Future agenda items.
Did you want to ask?
Yeah, I'm sorry, would you like to?
I'm actually Lopez and my son's in Riverside, but they're interested in creating more of a CAC, and so we're just coming to a circle.
We really don't have a CAC over there, so if it's a wonder, we're loving everything we're hearing.
Thanks for coming. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
We know Peter.
Yeah, I remain Peter Rabbit.
Where's your suit?
Well,
Where's your suit?
I'm just interested in anything you have to say.
Peter, I told them you must be at fashion design school tonight after your comment last.
The last day of our hearing was what, the 7th or something like that, whatever it was.
You wore a suit,
I
right?
took the, yeah, but I took the suit, no, it was the 26th, I took the suit off, I don't wear it,
He sends everybody when he wants something. I'm like, here, I gotta take a picture.
I am writing the closing argument, but I don't need to wear this.
Give Peter just 2 seconds.
I have a question for you, if you guys don't mind me asking. What do you, like, those of you that have been here for a while, what do you do with within your district? Because I met with Ms. Timken in Rancho, in Cucamonga, and they haven't had a CAC member for a long time. And from what I've observed, and in communicating with her, and it kind of goes to the comment that I didn't get her name, that she made earlier. It seems like there's kind of like this breakdown between the data and information that we have and what goes out to parents. And I don't know if, like I told her, what can I do as the CAC rep for them to engage these parents more or get them that information? Is there something that you guys do with your district, or do you like have meetings or something? Or because like as far as being in Cucamonga, when I go to talks, and I've been on campus at Los Amigos, I haven't even seen one special needs parent.
And also,
I don't run into them. I don't see
I
them.
shared it at the Weston SELPA Superintendent Council meeting. OMSD has done really nice brochures. They're threefold. They're pretty easy to make, but they have pictures of the school district, special ed, the director, the program specialist, so they can see the picture and all that, and a little quote on them. And it's good to have those to hand out so you can get parents interested in it. And then you start, your parent meetings with the special ed director on topics that, are not done here, other topics.
I think also,
Yeah,
I
within
asked
the district, yes.
my director, the CEO, that if I could send out a letter that could go out like with the first report cards, just introducing myself, and she invited me to do that. A letter that went out with everyone's first report card, or here at teacher conferences, is tonight, we have this thing called the CAC, and I'm the rep, and if they need anything from me, if I could help them with a resource or information, and I've gotten calls through that, just asking me questions, and I've referred people to the clinical parenting, or we have this going on, or I can come with you if you'd like, so that's another way.
I think another thing that has worked for me too, when I started at OMSD, is I did a lot of visits to schools myself, although it takes a lot of driving, but going to presentations. But I actually I asked my superintendent at that time if I could go to the principal's meeting just for 5 minutes, just to introduce myself, and I gave them the flyers, and I gave them my name, and so then I went to the RSP meeting, then I went to the RH consulting meeting. So I made myself very visible to all have the reach out to those parents. So by the time, they're like, it's a lot easier for a K through 8, because when you get to the high school, then it's the territories are so far away from each other. But I made it for myself, made it a point to go out to those certain meetings with a lot of information, and from them they can refer parents to me. Then I went to schools and meet, basically just go to presentations they were having. I know for Chaffey District we had a coffee surveys with the advisors, and I try to make it. It's a lot of time. It's like being a CAC representative to me is like that's my child. It takes a lot of time and a lot of investment, but it's so worth it. And really that's what it is. You have to spend a lot of time going out to the community and reaching out to
She's in a bridging room.
No.
But you have to set boundaries too, or your parents don't.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any future agenda items?
Yes. I wanted to request, if the microphone issue is going to be resolved by us going to another room, then this doesn't need to be an item, then it doesn't need to be an item. But if it's a consideration that we go to another room and we have microphones available in that other room we go to, that is a future agenda item. And then also something that feeds into what you just brought up, Israel, which is that we have the email addresses. This is another future agenda item of the CAC members on the CAC page. Then parents can get in contact with their representative. You could also ask it for it to be on the district page, but we could all put our CAC our email addresses on the WESELPA CAC page. So I'd like to request that as an agenda item.
I have an agenda item. Monkey server, is that what it's called?
Survey Monkey?
I think we need to do the survey like we talked about redoing it.
The roast brought up, because it's going to be
Talked about
time.
that, but you guys
for us.
gave me that idea last time because not
No, the
everybody
monkey
has-
survey? Oh, no, I wanted that. Oh,
Survey
dear Lord.
Survey.
I didn't want the handwritten one.
Monkey survey.
Survey, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Rose, actually,
I don't know technology like you, Peter.
This is not actually a technology.
All I knew is when my superintendent said, why didn't you do it on this? I'm like,
We
what?
We wanted to, and it was brought up, so maybe you brought it up. I know a lot of people were like,
Roasted,
no
roasted.
way, because not everybody has a computer, not everybody has
But you
access to
still
one.
have to take paper ones if they hand
Right.
them in. But the majority of them,
We
if
did
it's on the
decide.
computer, they prefer the computer over,
After we compiled and went through all of our districts and all our stuff, we said next time it's gotta be computer.
Right.
I mean, that was crazy, especially some of the districts. Mine wasn't as bad as this, but some of them were.
And those survey programs, from my understanding, they can even translate, I'm not 100% sure, because OMSD, I think it was like 70% were Spanish.
So
Right,
They
I've
had to be
heard a lot of good
translated.
ideas from everybody tonight. How about if you had one item brainstorming best practices to communicate with parents? Because you shared a lot of good ideas of what you're doing, and you could make like a checklist of what people could do.
Okay.
And then you could talk about how would this work with the email addresses and how would it work.
I wanted to add about the survey, as I know I've been
My still requesting as a future
Oh.
agenda item.
That's what she said,
Yeah.
also as a future agenda item,
Yeah, if she
brainstorming.
wants to do another one, that's fine.
But would you be okay including that as one of the strategies?
To have a list of different,
No, that we talk about all the strategies for communicating with parents, and one of them would be that would fall under that, posting the email addresses to the website, so we could have a whole list. that
right.
We could restrict.
Thank you for coming.
Good night. For historical purposes in the future, with
Yeah,
changes in
maybe.
number of people, I would too.
Maybe that's what our next CAC survey can be all about, is how would you like us to reach you? By email, by,
Good question.
And how would you like to
Phone.
reach us?
yeah, and
Because
give
we should be
examples.
accessible.
Would you like us to be on
That's
the
why you're on
WESELPA
CAC.
website, would you like us on a brochure,
Survey.
Yeah,
Pass it
survey.
out, do a survey.
But do the, what is it?
If we just did it,
Survey monkey.
if we just did all of those things and
Survey
put our
Monkey
details
takes all
out
the
everywhere,
input
then
and develops
we don't
charts and
really have to
everything for you,
ask.
so you don't even have to compile the data.
Yeah.
It does it all.
Yeah.
And then for
I think we should do that, put that on the agenda to, come up with a survey.
Survey is one
Like a
strategy.
half page, all right, anybody else? All right, if there's nothing else, then we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:27.
And thank you,
Your
Sharon. definition is a passion.